All right, man, peace. First of all, let me say this. All of you brothers that clicked on this video thinking that you were going to watch a video about sex should be ashamed of your damn selves, man. This video is pertaining to the importance of brothers that may be at a crossroads and trying to discern what they want to do with their lives. You know, considering taking up a trade, learning a trade, and going to a school or institute, you know, to possibly learn a craft if they feel that college is not for them, because college is not for everybody, man. And some of you brothers out there, maybe some of you younger brothers, 15, 16, 17 years old, you don't know what you want to do with your life. You don't feel like you particularly want to go to college. Learn a trade. A lot of times that can be a lot more lucrative. It can be more beneficial to you in regards to your manhood and maintaining a peace of mind, not having to conform to that corporate atmosphere and dealing with a lot of the hijinks and nonsense that you get with that. Just something to consider. So the particular craft that's going to be highlighted in this segment is plumbing, which will always be essential in any civilized society. Anyway, they're going to talk about it, I'm going to chime in.
All right. In broken boiler, cracked pipes, you may find it harder than ever to find a plumber.
Nationwide, there is a plumber shortage in on Long Island. The problem is especially critical. CBS 2's Caroline Gussoff explains why.
Don Conway grew up learning the trade from his dad. But now,
did you hear that? It stated that Mr. Don Conway grew up learning the trade of plumbing from his father. In the ancient world, a young boy was put through what was known as an apprenticeship, so that by the time he came of age, he was extremely proficient at whatever his father taught him. That is why a lot of the ancient structures from antiquity, they're still standing today, because stonemasons, builders, architects, plumbers in the ancient world were far more proficient than they are today, believe it or not. Now, in certain ways, mankind today is better, particularly pertaining to electronics, but that's about the only way that mankind is better today than they were in the ancient world. There have been certain advancements in medicine, but in everything else other than electronics and in some forms of medicine, the ancient world was better, particularly pertaining to building and construction. What we call the megalithic structures. Many of the top historians of today are so confounded as to how the megalithic structures were built that they would rather attribute the building of those structures to aliens than to actually who built them.
now his children want nothing to do with plumbing.
They would much rather sit behind a computer, neat and clean.
He's the vice president of Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors of Long Island and says across the nation there's a plumber shortage as baby boomers retire and the supply of newcomers through the pipeline dries up.
Hey, brothers, you hear that? They stated that nationwide there is a shortage in plumbers. That's why I stated that many of you young brothers out there who might not know what field you want to go into, you're getting pressured by someone in your family to attend college. You may not want to go to college. Learn a trade like plumbing. Learn a trade like electrician. Learn a trade like carpentry. This is a masculine trade that will allow you to work with your hands, predominantly be by yourself. You won't necessarily have to worry about the hijinks, the antics, a lot of the politics of the corporate world. And you'll be able to make a very good salary.
I'm busy all the time. The phone just rings all the time.
On Long Island, the actual number of plumbers has risen in the last decade, but not enough to keep up with the growing population.
You see that? Remember, as people buy houses, they're going to need plumbers to service their homes. They're going to need electricians to service their homes. There's always going to be work for a good plumber. You go through your apprenticeship, and after a while, you may even get to the point where you can open your own business.
The need for service on Long Island is exploding.
Chris Ragusa.
Listen to that. He said the need for service on Long Island is exploding. And I know most of you brothers that listen to my videos are probably not even from Long Island. But I guarantee you that there is a need for plumbers wherever you're at.
So one of 6,000 plumbers on Long Island. He's on call 24/7 and turning business away.
Damn, turning business away. There's so much work to do in regards to the plumbing in many of these people's homes, because also understand that many of these homes constantly have to be renovated. They're oftentimes dilapidated. They need a plumber to reconstruct the pipes in their home, not only for their toilet, for their sink, their kitchen, so on and so forth, oftentimes for their heating as well. I believe I mentioned this in the video that I did on the Latin language, but when I was in high school, I had to take Latin. And oftentimes in Latin, we would have to read different historical accounts on the Roman Empire. And one of the more notable achievements of the Roman Empire, or at least what is attributed to them, are advancements in plumbing and sewage and irrigation, etc. They oftentimes will give an accentuated amount of credit to ancient Rome for plumbing. Why is that? Because ancient Rome is viewed as being a Caucasian empire. And they were, for a certain period, known as the Imperial Roman Empire in the 1st century AD. Afterward, it became more and more dominated by people of color, but that's neither here nor there. The point being is this. The ancient Romans did make great advancements in plumbing, but prior to that, you had very advanced civilizations, as they're called in the conventional historical accounts, the Indus River Valley civilization, or as the scriptures refer to them as the Elamites, the Mohenjo-Daro, or Harappan civilization, as it's called. They had very advanced plumbing systems. They also had toilets. The Etruscans, or as the scriptures call them, the Ludim, who were descended from the people of Shem. They became known as the Etruscans when they left Asia Minor and settled in Italy. They're the civilization that laid the groundwork for a lot of the plumbing and irrigation achievements that were advanced upon or improved upon by the Romans in the 2nd century BC. What the Romans did was they were the first civilization to really use lead pipes. And that had its good effects and that had its bad effects. The lead pipes, it is conjectured by many conventional historians, led to potential lead poisoning, especially in the civilization known as Pompeii, which for those of you who like history know came to a very ignominious end when Mount Vesuvius erupted. Point being is this. There were cultures that preceded ancient Rome that were very advanced in plumbing. Ancient Egypt, they used copper pipes. If you read about the ancient Egyptian method of plumbing, it was developed by Pharaoh Menes. I've mentioned that person before. That is Cush in the scriptures. The term Menes means the numberer. He was the person who was able to divert the Nile River. So he was very familiar with how to engineer waterworks and things of that nature that are essential to building up a civilization. I say all that to say this, brothers. Plumbing will always be a viable career option. It was in the ancient world and it is now. Okay? So once again, for those of you who are not sure what career path to take, you are going to have to be able to make your own money. If you don't want to go to college, consider taking up a craft like plumbing. It can be very lucrative.
The demand fueled by overdue renovations of aging homes in the nation's oldest suburb and consumers upgrading to more water-efficient fixtures and systems. Plumbers' unions are asking educators to revisit the need for vocational training.
There's not enough training in the public schools, I think.
Absolutely, because the public school system is trained to ferry all the students into the college system. That is how they introduce you into the debt slave mentality. Brothers, don't feel like you just have to go to college to impress people. You have to do what's best for you. So if you know what you want to do, then fine. You do what you feel like you need to do. But for those of you who are not sure, you can consider embracing a craft, especially one that is always going to be essential. But like he's saying, there was a time in high school where they taught trades. They don't teach trades anymore because they want to act as if everyone wants to do a job where they have to act like they're cerebral. There's nothing wrong with being someone who works with your hands. And most of these people go to college for 4 years. They don't learn shit and they're dumb as hell.
Everybody seems to be geared towards heading off to college. College is great, but it's not for everybody.
I agree, sir. It's not for everybody. A lot of people just go to college so that they can impress other people over dinner. Sit down at a huge banquet and talk about how many degrees they have. To be quite frank with you, the liberal woman loves to do that, the most. Go to college for 57 years and talk about how they going back for another degree. Meanwhile, you could have went to plumbing school carpentry school, learn to be an electrician, making an excellent salary. I'm talking to you young black men. You guys have to decide what you want to do with your lives. You can't just sit back, smoke weed, and play video games all damn day. All right? Just being real. If that's not what you're doing, then don't be offended. If that is what you're doing and you're offended, oh well. You have to use the skills that the Most High gave you. Get up and make yourself a productive member of this society, and particularly of your so-called community, so that when you decide to have a child, you have a plan, you can provide for that child, and hopefully preside over your family. Hopefully. But it's one step at a time. That's why I always tell you, brothers, don't engage in any serious relationships until you know what you want to do and you're on your way to doing what you'd like to do. So consider this profession right here. I saw this segment. They're stating that there are a lot of openings. There's always a lot of work for plumbers. So I said this is a good idea for a video.
Plumbers say skilled trades offer young people what college can't guarantee.
And before this gentleman speaks, before it slips my mind, you know, the word for plumbing, since I was talking about ancient Rome and Latin, the word for plumbing comes from the word for lead in ancient Latin, known as plumbum, if I remember correctly. Spelled Plumbum. That's where you get the term plumber from, because they handled lead. The Romans preferred to use lead. I believe they lined it with limestone on the inside to try to prevent lead poisoning. Very good engineers, but they got a lot of their engineering from the Etruscans who preceded them, who they eventually overthrew. This is a whole video for another day, but the Caucasians, who became known as the Romans, they overthrew all the indigenous people of the Italian peninsula, who were all people of color. The Sabines, the Ostians, the quote-unquote Tuscans, also known as the Etruscans, they were all people of color. They would all be noted as being so-called black today. I'm not saying that they're of the same lineage as the people here in the Americas who call themselves black, but they would be considered so-called black today. Okay? But once again, that's a video for another day. Every time you analyze a successful civilization or empire, one of the main forms of civil works that they mastered was plumbing and irrigation. You have to be able to provide water for your people. In ancient Rome, they had public baths. They had public toilets where people would sit down and talk and converse about what was going on in the empire, what was going on in their day. A lot of negotiating was done on those toilets. They didn't have a flushing mechanism, so what they would do is they would have running water underneath the toilets. They didn't have toilet paper. They did have a sponge on a stick, if I remember correctly. They get up and wipe their ass with the sponge on that stick, and then just stick this sponge back down in the flowing water and wipe the fecal matter off of it. And then the next person will come and use that same stick. I know it's nasty, but it is what it is. In ancient Rome, they would also, oftentimes the people who didn't have indoor plumbing, they would defecate, and they would have an elected official who had to go around and collect the defecation, and they would take it out into the fields and use it as fertilizer. Okay? So, it is what it is.
I know some people with bachelors and masters, and they're sitting on some nice debt right now. And look,
I agree. That's the point of college, is when you go to college, you get a six-figure debt. That's what it's set up for.
Now and looking for jobs, and they're hard to find out there for them as well. And I also know people that are in the trades at young ages already putting down payments on homes.
I believe you.
After a 7-year apprenticeship, a licensed plumber can make 6 figures.
Hey, you hear that? And you see those pipes right there? Those are copper pipes. That was the answer to a lot of the lead issues that were occurring due to lead pipes. They went back to copper pipes, which the ancient Egyptians or the people of Kemet were using from antiquity under the instruction of Cush, or as he was known in the ancient world, or I should say as he's known conventionally, Pharaoh Menes, M-E-N-E-S. That is the person who was given the credit for unifying ancient Kemet, Upper and Lower Egypt. He ruled in a co-regency with his son Pharaoh Narmer, who was known in the scriptures as Nimrod. Okay? The point being, you see those copper pipes there? That takes away the possibility of lead poisoning. That's why I state that ancient Rome is given a lot of credit, but also they did not quite understand what the preferred metal is that should be used for irrigation and for plumbing, etc.
And be his or her own boss. As for the rest of us, as we head into the heating season, it's getting colder and pipes will break. Don't be surprised if it takes longer to find emergency plumbing service and costs more. In East Hills, Long Island, Carolyn Gussoff, CBS 2 News.
And it's not just plumbers, there's also shortages of electricians and carpenters as well.
Hey, brothers, you hear that? Not just plumbers, there's also shortages of electricians and carpenters as well. So those are other fields that you can look into if you're not quite sure what you want to do with your life. And it doesn't just have to be brothers who are 16, 17 years old. It might be a brother who's 30, 31 years old and is at a corporate job or does not quite know where he wants to take his life. You can consider that as well. I mean, hell, even Queen Elizabeth had a technician who helped create the first toilet or the first indoor toilet that was used in modern society, quote unquote. I believe the cat's last name was Harrington. And he was a so-called black man, by the way. And Queen Elizabeth was a so-called black woman, by the way, for those who don't know. I'll probably be doing a video on her eventually. But yes, Queen Elizabeth was a so-called black woman. And she was involved in the invention of the first modern toilet, or what they called a flushing closet, if I remember correctly. But the person who invented that was a man last name Harrington. I can't remember his first name. But I'll be covering Queen Elizabeth soon enough. Anyway, peace.